Jerry Smith, and I'm a writer for Dread Central. I am extremely happy to be moderating this panel on indie horror, from short films to features, as part of our Dissecting Horror series of live discussions, panels, reunions, and so on. I'm joined today by a panel of filmmakers whose work I not only admire and appreciate, but they're also filmmakers who like to wear as many hats as possible. All four of these filmmakers, they act, they write, they produce, they direct. I mean, the list goes on, and they're all four filmmakers that I just appreciate the hell out of. So I thought it'd be great to put them all in one panel and talk about short films, features, the journey from one to the other, and just having fun in general. So first up, we have director, producer, journalist, film festival organizer, programmer, short story writer. The list goes on, and the director of Rehome, My Monster, for a Good Time Call, and a film that caught my eye and made me a fan of this filmmaker, Innsmouth. We have Izzy Lee. How's it going, Izzy?
Hey, it's weird. How are you, man?
I'm doing, weird. I think that's a good way to describe it. Next up, we have Gigi Sao Guerrero, whose film Dia de los Muertos really just stood out to me. It was part of an anthology that I saw, Mexico Barbaro, and I loved the hell out of that whole film, but that segment especially. She's also the director of El Gigante and many other short films, and eventually led to TV's The Purge and Blumhouse and Hulu's Culture Shock, which I'm sure every one of you saw. Not only a filmmaker to look out for, but Gigi also voiced characters for a Netflix show and as all of your TVs and commercials. So Gigi, how's it going?
Very good, man. I have to admit, this year has been absolutely hilarious, being in the most annoying commercial that has landed in everyone's living room. It is so funny to me that everyone's like, is that Gigi on Swiffer Sweeper? I'm like, and it's just been so crazy. I'm glad you mentioned it. Thank you so much.
I do have to ask though, did they send you a lot of Swifter merch to go with it?
I did. My dad was really happy. Like, we have
Kitchen
a
is
good
clean.
stock of this house smells good, and Swiffer Sweeper works. So
that's a good plug.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming. Next up, filmmaker, journalist, educator, producer. The amount of hats this filmmaker wears is impressive, to say the least. We have the director of Margaret, Labyrinth, and upcoming segment of the holiday anthology December, as well as the wrestling fan turned stalker film Powerbomb. BJ Colangelo, what's up?
Hi. I mean, not a whole lot is up. I'm trapped in the house because I'm immunocompromised, but doing a lot of virtual stuff, so keeping myself busy.
I think we're all trying to do that. It's just insanity out there. Like I ate my neighbor earlier. It's weird. Last but not least, this filmmaker has animated projects for Kevin Smith. Made a hell of a feature that I love called Greywood's Plot. Another feature, this time worked with Robert Rodriguez on this one, called The Good Exorcist. All around badass and fellow Alien Covenant apologist, Josh Stifter. What is up, my friend?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I've been looking forward to it since the first email I got asking, so I'm really excited to be part of this.
Yeah, I sent that to you by mistake. It's weird. No, I'm just
and I'll go.
Right. So off the bat, this like curveball question. As filmmakers, we're all bitten by a bug early on, whether it's a filmmaker in particular or a film that really just planted that seed of wanting to create and be a filmmaker yourself. I mean, for me growing up, the moment I saw Starman and discovered the work of John Carpenter, and as a teenager, John Cassavetes, both of those came together, and it's just like, I need to be doing this. So this is for all of you. Who is the filmmaker, and what is the film that really started you on this journey of, I want to be a filmmaker? VJ, go ahead and start.
Okay, so the film, that's an easy one. It was Sleepaway Camp, and I watched Sleepaway Camp way too young. I watched it at a sleepover with a bunch of my friends, and it was the first time that I watched a movie where different moments affected the people in the room differently. Up until that point, everything that I had watched, we're all going to jump at the same jump scare, but Sleepaway Camp isn't really a jump scare movie. But I remember, like, I was really, really upset by the gross pedophile, cook. And then one of my friends was really, really upset about the bees because they're allergic to bees. And the other one was really, really upset about the shower scene. And I had this moment where I was like, it's like, wow, film can, impact people differently. And that was like a really eye-opening experience for me. As far as the filmmaker, it's always John Waters for me, for a couple reasons. One, because John Waters makes movies for him and for like-minded individuals. He really does not care if you like what he has to say or what he's putting out. And that's sort of how I am as a person. But he also works with really small budgets. And I am the child of an extreme couponer. I don't think I would know what to do if I had a lot of money. So that sort of DIY or die spirit has always really resonated with me. So combining both of those two together, that was definitely my inspiration.
Awesome. And Izzy?
Hey, the first movie I remember being profoundly affected by was An American Werewolf in London by John Landis. Scarred for life. Watched it maybe, I don't know, 5 years old. And I'd sneak down the hallway and watch it and then get scared and run away. And like my parents were watching it on HBO one late night. But beyond that, I also got really sucked into the Edgar Allan Poe, Roger Corman, AIP, Vincent Price films. And those were so beautiful and gothic and lovely and decadent and entrancing. Like all that stuff happened about the same time, I think. And so they've been indelibly imprinted onto my psyche ever since. But probably, I wouldn't say the filmmaker that influenced me the most has to be John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Gigi, what about yourself?
Whew. I think mine's in like part 1 and part 2 because my mind was not made up right away. When I come from like a super strict Catholic Mexican house, so we're just not allowed to watch anything violent or scary. And when I was maybe, I don't know, like 8 or something like that, at Blockbuster, back when we had Blockbuster, I decided to steal. I mean, well, Mexicans, we don't steal, we borrow for a long time. I decided to borrow VHS of Chucky. It was Child's Play 2. And I
Best
remember
one.
I would always walk down the horror aisle being so curious of all these films. My mom was always like, no, you cannot watch. And I was like, I want to see, right? But that one in particular really would always terrify me and catch my eye, especially just the visual of Chucky with giant scissors just cutting another doll's head. I was like, wow, like, what is that? So I, took it, got in a lot of trouble, but that was the first time that I saw anything so terrifying. I think I maybe only watched half hour or something like that. I was really young and I had never felt fear in my life. And I couldn't believe kind of what BJ was saying, that a film can really impact you and change you. And for me, that memory was the first time understanding how a movie can follow you and how it could make a presence. And I was convinced Chucky was in that closet. I'm telling you right now. I was like, he's there. What am I feeling? What is this feeling? And so that was the start to horror movies. But the film and the director that completely changed in part 2 my life into wanting to go to film school I was 16 and I saw Children of Men in the theater. And I'd never seen a movie like that. I didn't even know there was Mexican directors. So thanks to Cuarón's film, it led me to find out about Iñárritu, which led me to find out about Del Toro, Rodriguez. The rest is history. So I was like, Latinos for life. And that's the end of the story.
Oh, that's great. That film's just awesome.
Yeah.
Josh, what about you?
Yeah, so I've had the most time to think about this now, and I started going down this like mental. I went back through my entire life to figure out what it was through this, and I realized, like, so I would sneak over to the neighbor kid's house when I was little. I'm talking like 3 years old, and his older brother would show us Nightmare on Elm Street, Hellraiser. Like, I saw all of the most, terrifying movies of the 80s. But I remember one specific thing that happened. You know how, I don't know if any of you had this, but in your house when someone would get the flu or the stomach bug, like everyone would get it, and you'd all be kind of like laid out. So that happened to me one time, and my mom was the only one who didn't get sick and ran to Blockbuster and brought home Beetlejuice. And I watched Beetlejuice, and I had seen a ton of horror movies with my friends. I'm like 6 years old at this time. I'd seen horror movies, but watching Beetlejuice with my sick dad and seeing his like mind go in all these places and seeing how weird that movie was, that was the first time at like 6, 7 years old I went, you can do whatever you want in a movie. This Mars worms, and like they're dead and they're pulling their faces apart. You can just make whatever you want. That's like the joy of filmmaking. So for me, that moment when I saw that, when just like, I want to do that so I can let these weird things out of my brain onto the screen. That was like the pivotal moment of, I gotta do this. And within like a couple of years, my dad got the first like big old VHS camera that we could film with. And so then I just started stealing the camera and running around with that. So that was kind of the beginning of it all, was Beetlejuice. And Tim Burton, his early stuff always has stuck with me.
Yeah. I used to get grounded from watching Beetlejuice because as a kid, I would always, recite the nice fucking model part. So I'd be grounded every time.
Yes.
Dude, Michael Keaton is like he is Beetlejuice. Like that movie, yeah.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
Amazing. And the best part is he doesn't even show up. Like the unconventional elements of him not showing up till like 45 minutes into the movie, besides like one little trailer and one little thing at the beginning, is genius. Those like unconventional things that at that point I had only seen kind of conventional horror and Disney movies. So that movie was just like, wow, you can do whatever you want.
That leads to my second question. All of these films were so huge for all of us. I mean, like I said, Starman was one really big for me because I came from a very religious, very conservative family. Like emotion is bad. If you're a little boy, you can't show emotion or you're in the wrong. And Starman was the film that really taught me that it's okay to feel, because I still think it's one of the purest films ever made. And that made me want to tell stories, and hearing all of you talk about these films, like I have to ask, like, how impactful as a storyteller were these films for you? I mean, Josh, you said that Beetlejuice taught you that you could do anything. And, knowing your work, I mean, you're a painter, animator. I mean, just from your Twitter feed, I mean, it's insane how many creative hats that you try to do just within your films. I mean, before we started this, you were saying that your windows are boarded up because you're filming a movie by yourself in a gas mask, like that kind of like everything out there approach that Burton had in Beetlejuice and stuff. It speaks volumes on how it affected you. For the rest of you, like BJ, you mentioned Sleepaway Camp. Did that inform your approach to storytelling per se?
One of the things that it definitely hit me with is that you can have characters talk like people, which when you're a kid and you watch kind of the Disney sort of children's cinema, nobody really talks like that in real life. But I just remember sitting back and watching the baseball scene, and there's also, if you can hear my landlord, I am so sorry, he's very heavy-footed. But the baseball scene where they're insulting each other, and he's like, eat shit and die, Ricky, and Ricky goes, eat shit and live, Bill. And I just remember like it like just hit me in the core. I was like, you can have them talk like this. And it really sort of inspired this idea of having authentic characters and having characters be who they are, not this caricature of what you think they're supposed to be, but make them real, make them tangible. And Sleepaway Camp definitely had a big impact on me, and that was definitely sort of amplified by John Waters, because those characters are who they are, and there's no one else like them. And I've always really been fascinated by that, and I want the stories that I tell to feel real. And if it's not a character that you personally can identify with, at least someone out there might be able to.
Mm-hmm. You know, Izzy, you mentioned American Werewolf and the Corman AIP films, which are very different types of films. And that's one of the things about your films that has always stood out to me, is how if you watch 5 of your films, not a single one feels like the other. And I mean that in the best of ways. It's all across the board, and that speaks volumes to you as a filmmaker. Do you think that liking very different things growing up and getting into filmmaking because you like these various things, that informed your kind of all across the board approach that you're so good at?
I don't know. I'm just drawn to like all sorts of weird shit. I'm drawn to things that scare the hell out of me, which, by the way, you know, watching films for decades, it's like super hard to do. So it's like trying to chase this, you know, elusive drug type feeling of like, what's gonna scare me next? Damn it, it's not gonna, like, I get scared like once a goddamn decade by a movie, right? It's pathetic. But then I also have a lot of fun with like some of the camp and the high gothic costumes and the humor. I guess I don't know if this is like a schizophrenic thing or a bipolar thing or whatever. But I love these two different, very extreme sides. And I started experimenting with humor myself kind of recently. And some people really dig it and some people don't, and that's fine, because, you know, a lot of people expect a lot of rage from me, and that comes out quite often, like with Rehome, which I filmed with Gigi.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I need to lighten the fuck up and have fun, like with my monster. So
I totally, yeah,
it's
I
hard
totally
to say.
relate that.
Like I really dig Hereditary, but I really love Crimson fucking Cake.
No, totally.
You know?
And you know, Gigi, you mentioned you know, discovering that, you know, Latin filmmakers are out there, and it kind of opened your eyes.
Mhm.
Did that inform your storytelling in the sense that, you know, like your films are very much you can tell, you know, they're very much from where you're from and your background. Did that kind of revelation of finding those films and those filmmakers really inspire you to be like, you know what, I can talk about things that are important to me and my background in my film?
Oh, for sure. Like 100%. That's exactly what happened. Like after seeing Children of Men, although the topic is not Mexican or Latino of any kind, that movie showed me how you can just through storytelling remind an audience that the horrors in real life are real, and how you can twist the genre so much into this unbelievable world that at the end of the day, we're not far from that. You know, we're not far from that reality. So I remember I was like, I hate humanity after I watched Children of Men, but it led me to, you know, see how other Mexican directors were doing it. I felt what all these Mexican directors had in common was that they weren't afraid to cross the line to talk about some awful shit that we lived through. And I was like, not saying like Mexico's awful, because I love it with all my heart, but I felt this grittiness and this rawness that they were not afraid to put on screen was something that I wanted to do too. And I was going through a really hard time at that age because I felt I was losing my Latin side. I felt I was trying so hard to adapt in Canada, trying to learn English, trying to just be something else. And I felt through film was the best way to stay close to my roots. So I was like, well, if Rodriguez can do it with grindhouse and gore, so can I, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of just inspired me so much. I'm like, I want to be the next, you know, I want to be the Latina Rob Zombie. I want to do that. You know, I was like trying to just throw my roots on filmmaking so much. I just wanted to be close to it again, because I felt I didn't know who I was. I was trying so hard to be Canadian, to be not me here. And, you know, and it can be really hard when you move countries. So it's through film that I couldn't be more happy to share life experiences, to share our culture. And I feel so lucky that Culture Shock now was that feature debut to show that, to show exactly that feeling that I've been having. And yeah, through the shorts, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. You know, being an indie filmmaker means problem solving to the max. I mean, you know, no money, borrow or steal equipment, you know, Josh's case. You know, sound person doesn't show up, who can hold a mic and push a button? You know, all these things. And while there are problems and obstacles in studio films as well, I feel like it's the independent level of filmmaking that you really have only yourself to fall back on. A question for all of you: has that helped you as filmmakers learn how to problem solve, or has it been more of a hindrance in your career thus far? Of like, you know, give me some help.
No, I think I definitely can say for myself through every short film, they're an obstacle for sure, but man, your work can only be as good as your ambitions, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it's through the short films that you get to discover your voice, you get to really learn from your mistakes, but you can't be afraid of that failure. You can't be afraid of the scale of that short either. Like that that is the safest place to practice and keep going. Um, you know, I mean, for me, I think short films are the best way to start. Man, like they're awesome, and I think they teach you discipline in a way. Like, what can I pull off? Like, what ambition can I? What is so ambitious enough, but not so ambitious that I can't pull it off? Is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like it teaches you to write to a location you have for free, to the friends you have for free that are actors. You know, it teaches you like to problem solve immediately. Hmm.
Mm-hmm. And BJ, how about yourself?
So mine comes from a place of pettiness, if I'm gonna be real. Because in college, so my degree is in theater, and there were two tracks. There's like BA theater, then there's BFA musical theater. And even though all of us performed in all the same things, our educational track was different. And the kids that were on the BFA track, it was all performance, only performance. So, you know, acting, singing, and dancing. BA theater, you had to take stagecraft, you had to take costuming, you had to take lighting, you had to take history, you had to take all of these things that, you know, the other kids didn't have to take. And there was this weird sense of rivalry where the kids with the BFAs were like, oh, well, we're the more elite class because we're the BFAs. And I was like, yeah, do you know how to fix the hem on your costume when it rips? No. Well, I do. So that sort of world of pettiness has definitely traveled with me through filmmaking, where I will admit I've worked with people in the past that have not been, you know, where I would like them to be, and it has been very difficult. And there, you know, filmmaking, even on the smallest scale, can be very difficult, can be very heartbreaking. And it got to this point where I never wanted to depend on anyone else. If something went wrong, I wanted to be able to know how to fix it. I didn't want to be there on set and have a mishap happen and not know what to do. So I've sort of curated at least working knowledge of just about everything. So if that happens, I can be there, I can fix it. I also am very fortunate that because I live in the Midwest and I live somewhere where filmmaking is, it's like the circus coming to town. Whenever a movie is shot here, it's like the biggest news that could possibly happen. So if you're an independent filmmaker and you want a location or you need some assistance, people are so willing to help, which is really, really nice. Because then I'm afforded these different opportunities to tell different stories in different places because the community is there to help, which is something I'm very, very thankful for, and something that I know that once I leave Cleveland will go away. So I'm fortunate that I've, you know, tried to figure out how I can be this one man band if necessary. I would love to not have to be. I would love to be able to go, this is your expertise. You just do that and do it to the best of your ability, because I would like to not be stressed all the time. But until then, I make it work.
Hey, you know, what's funny about you're talking about like resourcefulness and learning all this stuff. really briefly, I directed a film called Love is Dead, and BJ produced it. Flew all the way from Ohio to LA for us to do that. And just in that one weekend, everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Oh, no.
Every single thing went wrong.
And it was like the first legitimate like film I had made. Joanna Angel, Aaron Thompson were starring in it. And the night before we were supposed to film, our location dropped out. And BJ was one of the people like, well, maybe we should, mention this, maybe we could do that. And we ended up finding a location. Day of filming, our sound person was missing in action, and BJ was like, well, maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. So I think what you're saying, that resourcefulness and learning all of this stuff, it translates even to producing, not even just directing, because it's all about problem solving and stuff. Izzy, what about yourself?
Filmmaking is 100% problem solving. On my shorts, I am stretched way, way too thin, and I can't wait to make a feature with a real crew, so I don't have to worry about every little goddamn detail, because it's a lot. So if you're writing, you're directing, you're producing, you're flying in people, you're doing location scouts, and you're corralling every single tiny detail, and you're moving company move across town for a second location, and then you also have to like make sure everyone's dietary needs are met, and that can be a very, very important thing. It's one of the most important things. You don't want anyone to go into like a really bad food experience, shock or whatever, because of allergies or anything like that. You learn a lot just by doing it. I started getting into filmmaking just because I was just so pissed off at the state of this country, and that really hasn't changed in the last 8 years. But I just wanted to see if I could do it. I knew I could write. I knew I could act. I knew I could get people together and rally them. But could I make anything that was worth a damn? I had no idea. But I saw some other women doing it, and I was pissed off, like I said, at the politics of this country, and I wanted to try. And so here we are, and I got the bug, and I haven't stopped.
Good. Josh, with your insane amount of hats, I mean, I'm surprised you're not wearing your gas mask while filming while we're doing this panel. I know that,
Could be. I should have put it on. But,
right? I know, working with like Robert Rodriguez and the Rebel Without a Crew show and that whole experience for you, I think it's safe to say that maybe Rodriguez was an influence on you. I mean, his book Rebel Without a Crew, I think influenced almost everybody.
Yeah.
How, wearing all these hats, was that an influence on you, or what inspired your DIY approach that you so passionately have?
The friends that I made Greywood's plot are the same friends that I grew up at like 8 years old. I met Daniel when we were in kindergarten, when we were 6. The same year, Robert was filming El Mariachi. So like, there's this weird circle of just DIY spirit and like figuring it out as we go, and the two of us learning together. And my buddy Keith, who was in Greywood's, he learned with us along the way too. I've known him since I was 13 days old. But BJ made a really good point about this, like, not wanting to know how to do everything, so that when you're put in that situation as a director or producer, at least understanding the concept of what's happening. And really, that's why I got into animation. I kind of took the Tim Burton route, and even Robert did animation early on. I remember, seeing Bedhead and seeing the animation at the beginning and going like, oh, that's the hardest thing you can do. Like, animation is frame by frame putting the stuff together. I want to do the hardest thing first, so that the rest of my life feels so much easier. So going into, Rebel Without a Crew, where Robert was like, I'm going to give you 14 days and, a fistful of dollars, and just go do this thing in a place you've never been to. Now make something. It didn't feel that hard, because I was like, well, at least I don't have to draw every picture. This is so much easier. But with that being said, there was so many times where, the reason why I got on the show was because when I sent an animation I did with Michael Parks to Robert, I had through crazy circumstances, through Kevin Smith and Tusk and whatever, I ended up getting Michael Parks to do his final performances actually in a short film I did called Other Fish. And I wanted Robert to see it because he had worked with Michael Parks, and I sent it to El Rey Network, and they were like, well, we like it, but we can't do anything with this weird movie. We like this other cartoon you did. And so they bought that. And while I was there, I just started like reciting passages from the book Rebel Without a Crew, because it's like literally my Bible. I have read it every week for years now. I read it like my grandma read, you know, Psalms and Proverbs. Like every night before bed, I open up Rebel Without a Crew. So so I mean, that reading that book, and even if it doesn't necessarily apply to the way the industry works now, you don't get into Sundance the same way. Things just don't work the same. That idea and spirit is still there. Like finding your Sundance, finding your thing that will get, you know, the right people to see it who will like it, even if that's just your little, you know, niche audience or whatever it is that you're looking for. Again, BJ said something really great about how each, you know, there were certain characters in Sleepaway Camp that hit every person differently. Like everyone can watch it and see something different. That is like exactly what I'm going for all the time, is like, how in each moment in my DIY little way can I like, how can I upset my wife with this scene? How can I make my kids laugh with this scene? How can I make Daniel laugh? What can we do to make this interesting in any moment for the audience? And I think that kind of goes back to seeing my dad watch Beetlejuice and going, wow, this is hitting him in his sick flu state. So it's always just like, how can I use what I have in this moment to make something pop?
No, totally. You know, I was going to go into the questions from Twitch and everything else a little later, but the next thing I wanted to ask all of you actually is a question that the same person asked. Drew Tinnen from Twitch had a question for all of you. Have short films working as a calling card for all of you?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, for those starting out, is it best to do a short first or just go for it and try to make a feature? That, and a second part of that question from me, which of your films that you've made to date do you think should at this point be your calling card? BJ, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yes, first off, short films definitely are a calling card. It gives people an idea of what your style is, what stories you're interested in telling. And at this point, so I've done a lot of co-directing in my career, but I much prefer to direct on my own. I think that goes back with that thing I was talking about of, you know, trust. So the two projects that I'm most proud of are Margaret and Labrys, which are the two that I directed completely solo. And Labrys is definitely, to me, my calling card. It was the first time that I was unafraid to tell a story that was unabashedly queer. There's definitely queer coding and stuff that I've written before, but this one, it was like on Front Street. And that was really important for me, even though that is also the short film that I've made with the least amount of money, in the least amount of time. It was shot legitimately at the bar that my wife manages. They closed up at 2:00. They cleaned the bar. We were in there at 2:30. We had to leave when the sun came up, and that's not a lot of time. But to me, I think it's the best example of just ingenuity and making things work under ridiculous circumstances, but also more importantly, it's the story that I've always wanted to tell, but for many years felt like I couldn't. And now that's the thing that I like to lead with. I tend to lead with that before even the feature that I made, because it's the one that I think is the most authentically me in regard to the art that I want to make.
Definitely. What's funny is I scored that short in exchange for a Blu-ray of Hellfest. So
You sure did.
it's using all your resources. Izzy, what about yourself?
I would not make a feature first, because you're gonna, if you haven't been to film school, and many of us have not, including myself, I think you're just gonna run into so many difficult issues, not just in terms of technical stuff, where like, where are you gonna put the camera, or what type of, you know, shot are you going to use for this scene? Is it going to be a wide, a close? a medium or extreme, like, whatever. I think you also need to go and learn pacing and story and editing and how to deal with actors. There's so many things to learn. I would say practice, 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 and teach yourself by doing, which is what I've been doing. And I'm really glad that I didn't go and try to make a feature right out of the bat, because it would have been terrible. Nobody ever would have seen it probably. And if they had, like, they may not have ever wanted to watch anything else I've ever made after that. I mean, my first short is not great. There's a lot of stuff I've done that's not on IMDb. But there's still spirit and heart there, and there's energy. And so, say for instance, if I was watching a short from a first-time short filmmaker, I could say, I like what you did here, work on that and develop that more. This is really something special. And then also, like, here are opportunities for improvement. I think making a feature right off the bat, if you haven't done a lot of film work, is going to be really tricky for most people. And I couldn't recommend that. Learn by doing, and just start practicing, and then get notes from your friends, and then keep going and growing and learning and work on other people's shorts and have them work on yours. Try to form a collective if you can. I've worked on a lot of other people's stuff, and they've worked on mine, and we've traded roles for free. Like, you crew on me, I crew on you. And it's been a really fantastic learning experience. I used to get upset when I started shopping around features 4 years ago that it wasn't happening. But looking back on it, I am so glad that I had another 4 years to keep learning and developing and honing skills, and watching techniques and things like that, because it's made all the difference in the world. And now I know I can make such a better movie than I could 4 years ago. Granted that it hasn't happened yet feature-wise, but I'm developing a few things, and so maybe next year, if all goes well.
Yeah, definitely. Gigi, what about yourself?
Ooh, I am the example of 20 short films and finally made it. Like,
Yeah.
some people, it takes, that one short, that first few, and then they go for it. Me, I think I was at like short film number 12 or 13. Like, we just had made so many, but it wasn't with the attitude of, oh, I gotta make another, oh, I gotta make another. It was just for the attitude of, like, I love doing this, no matter that it's coming out of my pocket and that these short films are literally made with no money. It was just, whatever we can find for free, what can we pull off? And of course, what made everyone work on them for free was because we always promised my parents cooking. So there was always that incentive. They were like, are your parents making food? I'm like, hell yeah, they are. So it's like, there was always at least, it was always treating the crew with the utmost respect, even if it was 5 or sometimes 20. It was always being part of something. And I think especially you have to start with short films, because you get to learn what it is to be a leader and what it is to be contagious in your enthusiasm. Because from short films to features, you as the leader of the project, people will follow that project because of you. And so you cannot show that stress. You cannot, like Izzy was saying, like, you are the one buying the plane tickets and doing all this. But for example, in that short that I acted in for Izzy, I had no idea she was stressing and dying. I thought she was having a good time. But it's that enthusiasm and that ambition that makes you want to do these projects. And I on the other hand, I did go to film school. I did. So making these short films, sure, I had an understanding of story, shot listing, blocking, etc., etc. However, I didn't have a voice. If you look at my trajectory of all 18 short films, there is a huge growth into what is that Gigi signature, what is that Luchagor signature of ours. And it it took me a long time. Some people just know right away, but short films really bring you those connections, really show you those experiences, and even what it is to go to a film festival if we ever have those again. But when you meet people. So for me, my short film El Gigante, which was I think like late in the game, like the 13th one or something like that. That's the first short film I was able to say, this is me. This is the one. And it was through that short film that got me the career I got today. And so I don't think you need to start with a feature to get to where you are. I got very lucky that with just a short, it got me agent, manager, and it got me the Blumhouse job, which I'm shocked because El Gigante is gore to the max and Blumhouse is not. So I'm still in shock that they hired me. But it all starts somewhere, and definitely think small. What can you pull off now that looks incredible no matter the size?
No, totally. Josh, what about you?
Yeah, just like kind of piggybacking off of that idea of like, what can you do now? What can you make? Like, the thing that got me on Rebel Without a Crew was I made a short film by myself one day, like around Christmas when my wife and kids were away for the day. I had the day off. I had an A6300, Sony A6300, which has this like really great autofocus. And I'm like, I'm going to push this to the max and see what I can do with this autofocus. So I just started filming myself being attacked by a Christmas stocking. That was it. That was literally all it was. There's no plot. There's nothing to it. It's just fun. And that's the thing that, when El Rey Network saw that, they were like, oh, this guy can pull off something by himself. He can pull off this with his friends and, a couple $1,000. And like, that was just a fun, stupid project. But I learned so much doing that. I learned about visual effects I could pull off. I learned how to run a camera better. I learned how to frame a shot because I had to think outside of myself and be like an imaginary DP as I'm in front of the camera, trying to figure out like, what is that person getting that I'm not seeing? And those kind of things like really pushed me to challenge myself. And yeah, I would say whether you consider them short films, like for me, it's hard to call Stalking a short film. It's like a funny project. I did it on a day before Christmas by myself, but it's like one of the things I've learned the most from. So if you're wondering like, what should I start on something today. What do you have in your kitchen? Like, start filming something, because that's how I've learned.
And I want to add to that. That's so cool. Can we see it? Can we find this?
Yeah, it's on YouTube and stuff. Yeah, it's just out there.
Like, everybody has a cell phone, and most of them film pretty damn good footage. And you can start with that. Like, your story reminded me of the one we did. It was two of us. And I was like, what's trending? What's something that everybody's clicking on and hashtagging? And it was that women were putting on that black charcoal mask that cleans your pores, right? And I was like, why don't we just film me doing that, but I actually rip off my face? Let's just do that. And it was such a viral hit. Like, that's how all my shorts started. They were silly little projects that were just viral for just being on whatever was trending. And you'd be surprised, like the attention you can get from these little things you can just pull off in the bathroom, or like Josh was saying, in the kitchen or whatever. Like, you just gotta pick up that camera. It really is that.
And like Izzy was saying, show it to your friends. That's like the thing that has taught me the most. And I get that honest opinion. Like, I show things to my wife that I know her like reaction is going to be, this is the worst idea ever. Why did you do it? Which instantly tells me this was the best idea ever. I'm so glad I did this. So like, that's, to me, that was like, that's the reason I got to Grey Woods, which was me filming my two friends filming me in my garage being turned into a dog man, was because I was going like, what does my wife not want to see? I'm gonna do.
I love that movie. Like, I unabashedly love that movie. Like, yeah.
Family ends up being your biggest fans. Like, that, the fact that you get to show family first, like the first cut or something, they're always like, ooh, and it makes you feel like, oh, I'm the best, because you're showing your family, and they truly will give you the most honest opinion too, because they, especially like my parents, they're the most general audience. Okay, let me rewind. My parents, they're those people obsessed with like all 20 Fast and Furious movies. They're the ones that will go see those. So I know that they will be very honest if it's not entertaining or whatever. But it's, you will get that feedback, like Izzy and Josh were saying, from the closest people. Like they will tell you. You can't be afraid of showing them.
Have they ever? Really quick question: have they ever asked you to put a car running from a submarine in one of your films?
Oh yeah, all the time. My mom's always like, "Can you make a kids movie or like an action adventure where like people don't like always die and like it's like super fun?" And I'm like, "Yeah, mom. Okay, one day."
I love it when you torture your family and you put the videos up on Twitter.
Oh,
Surprise endings.
it's
And they're
been
like,
yeah. Quarantine has let me it has let me force them to watch the most traumatizing horror movies. So this new thing of like everyone gets to choose a movie and you have to watch it, it's only been the most successful way to torture them. And you should have seen their face after Old Boy. Woo! They were like not okay after. Oh yeah,
Wow.
it's on Twitter. It's on, you can see my mom. She goes at the end, she's like, but he cannot, he can't do that. That's not okay. That no. Like she's just like
she's right.
yeah. No, it's great. It's great.
That's funny.
There's also something. Oh, sorry, Jerry.
No. Go ahead.
I'll say there's also something really beautiful about having the friends and family who are not, in the industry watch your projects, because there was this really validating feeling when I called my parents, who now live in Florida, to walk them through how to find my feature on Comcast On Demand. And like that, I've made it. Like now,
Yeah.
so this isn't just a hobby anymore. This isn't some like fun thing I do with my friends. It's like I can buy your movie on Comcast, like with my remote. Like that was like so mind blowing. And it was this wonderful moment where it's like, I have my friends that have been helping me with, Films Forever, and they're like, "Oh, you're in this festival, that's great. Oh, you're doing this, that's great." But to have like somebody who doesn't understand how any of this works be like, "Oh no, this is real," that to me was just like, if I could bottle that feeling, that like that's what's been getting me through quarantine, is trying to catch that lightning again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Izzy, you mentioned earlier about when it, your rage was a huge part of you going into this, and really quickly, I mean, your film Rehome, it is an angry as hell short film, and I'm curious, like, is it cathartic to you as a filmmaker to be able to like just channel that into these films? Because I mean, for a short film, that one in particular, it tells a big story in a short amount of time, and you feel that rage and you feel that those themes of what's going on today, and it's set in kind of a near future, but it really doesn't feel that far off, kind of like what Gigi was saying with Children of Men and how that made her feel. I'm curious, like, making a film like that is definitely your rage personified, do you walk away from it like feeling kind of like a catharsis, or do you just move on to the next one?
Am I a never-ending rage fucking Ferris wheel, do you ask? Yes and no. It depends on the day. It does make me feel better. It is therapy. It keeps me out of jail, quite frankly. So here we are. I just there's so much injustice in the world, and particularly this country, in the last 4 fucking years. And it was always there. It's just, holy shit, it is out in the open, no holds barred. And I don't know personally what else to do with that rage except for tell stories. It is the safest way for me to express myself. And so, yeah, I mean, that scream is going to come through. I've always done a lot of stuff with socio-political horror. I went to art school. I would make illustrations and paintings with themes that fit in that wheelhouse and things like that. And it's just stuff that genuinely upsets me. Sometimes I can't sleep at night, knowing, what we're doing in this country. And this is this is my one option. You know, I don't know what else to do, you guys. Like, it's either this or go to jail. I'm not joking.
I definitely think we can all relate to that, especially what's going on right now. Trust me. You know, in closing, you know, Gigi, I know Culture Shock on Hulu, people could access it. So this is more of a question for, you know, BJ, Izzy, Josh, and yeah, you too, Gigi, as far as like past stuff. Where can people find these? Like, we got a question on Twitch for BJ asking where people could watch Labyrinth. So, I mean, just in general, where can people find your stuff?
Sure. So Labyrinth is on Vimeo. It's just my Vimeo channel. It's Vimeo/BJ Colangelo. That's where Labyrinth is. My feature Powerbomb is on all video on demand services that cost money. So it's not like a free stream. But if it's like $3 on Amazon Prime, there it is. Go get it. But I'll also have, I wrote a few episodes of a series called So Far So Close. That will be coming out soon, and I'll post all the information on that on Twitter. And my Twitter handle is just my name as well. That's pretty much kind of like my home base for everything, because I'm very, very lazy and do not have a website, which I need to do one of these days. But Twitter right now is kind of my central hub for everything.
Awesome. And Izzy, what about yourself?
So a couple of places. Rehome, which Gigi, Morgan Peter Brown, and Casey Lansdale star in. It's playing Grimfest at the end of this month in the UK. It's winding down its festival run finally. And after that, it'll be on the Etheria collection at some point early next year, part of season 6.
Awesome.
Rites of Vengeance and My Monster are on YouTube on the Alter, ALTER, YouTube channel, which is Gunpowder and Sky's horror channel. For Good Time Call is part of the She-Venge anthology, which, as far as I know, is still on Amazon Prime. And my website is nilenoctum.com, and you can see all the festivals that my other little weird shorts that I haven't mentioned, which are like found footage, weirdo manifesto assembled, like tone poems, are also playing. So
awesome. Josh, what about you, man?
Yeah, so joshstifter.com is where you can find most of my stuff. I'm actually, one thing about making features on your own with basically no budget is you can do whatever you want with them and experiment and see which distributions work, see which don't, try things out. As long as you're willing to put in the time, I think it's worth it. The Good Exorcist is going to have a Blu-ray release with Trauma in the coming months, and then I don't know exactly when. I'm literally just getting deliverables to them now. Greywood's Plot, I'm trying something weird where you can like get a digital download of it from my website. You can buy it, and I send like a ProRes file, MP4, bunch of bonus features, tons of stuff, and then you can actually contact me and talk about the movie and ask questions and whatever. So trying something weird with that until, you know, distribution happens or whatever comes. That's sort of my mentality with them. But The Good Exorcist is also available on Amazon Prime or Amazon now for purchase. It was on Prime and I took it down because I can. That's the beauty of this. I can do whatever I want. So I took it down last week because why not? So yeah, The Good Exorcist, Greywood's Plot, everything you can find on joshstifter.com.
Awesome. And Gigi?
Yeah, like you said, you know, you can watch my feature debut, Culture Shock, on Hulu. El Gigante, the most disturbing short I think I've made, is on Shudder. But if you follow my team here, Lucha Gore Productions, on social media, you can see all our crazy shorts. And then stay tuned on Halloween. I shot a short during COVID, so we have one new short. I'm so excited. Oh my God. So I'll start promoting it soon. I'm pumped that we shot something. So yeah, just follow my social media and you'll see it all. But I wanted to add also one more thing, I guess, to the short films to features, is that I'm sure a lot of people are like, sure, that's all great to just shoot something with our phone and just start with what we have at our, you know, disposal. But how do I even find crew, or how do I even find people? And it's also really important to consider it's great to volunteer on other people's films. It's great to work man, I could tell you I'm the best boom op around. Like, I just loved working on other people's films, and you get to really learn from others the stuff that really went, that shit the bed, and the stuff that was like, I'm going to write that down. Holy shit, how'd they do that? And, even for myself in acting, that I do that a lot here because there's no Latinos, so competition is very tiny. But acting here, man, it has really opened up my eyes on how other directors direct. And you get to really learn from other people. And you have to just come with such a mentality of that filmmaking is a collaboration and it's not a one-man show. So you have to keep that in mind for when you start. That's all. Just wanted to add that. Yeah, I got to.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you all four of you for being a part of this. It was so much fun. And yeah, any viewers, if any of you guys are watching, check out their stuff. They're 4 filmmakers that, I just appreciate the hell out of their work. So definitely recommend it. Thank you for being a part of this Dissecting Horror panel, and hope you guys enjoyed it.
Bye.
Thank you.